Radio. If you were just turning on your radio,
the Baal HaTosfos probably never saw an elephant.
Audio.
A radio is a way to escape without leaving reality.
Jewish. Audio.
We produce clean, fun, and interesting audio.
Radio. www.radio.com.
Hi everyone, First Fruits in Torah as children prepare for Shavuot, the Israel Museum Bread Exhibit, the Bukharian Heritage Celebration, and a visit to an historic prison in Jerusalem. Let's get started. Shalom and welcome to Israeli Salad. On June 2nd, we celebrated Shavuot. The festival of Shavuot commemorates the anniversary of the giving of the Torah to Moses and the Jewish nation at Mount Sinai. Bikurim means first ones, the first seasonal fruits. The holiday of Shavuot marked the official start of the Bikurim season. The mitzvah requires every landowner to bring his first fruits to the Holy Temple as a gift to God's representatives, the Kohanim. The Bikurim aspect of Shavuot is what makes this festival a day of celebrating the continuous miracle of nature. In Israel, many secular institutions celebrate Shavuot from the agricultural side only. The Ta'ir institution decided to come to the center of Tel Aviv and teach how agriculture and religion come together throughout the year, and especially on Shavuot. Students of the religious schools in Tel Aviv were invited to an event commemorating the ritual of bringing the first fruits to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The event took place in the center of Tel Aviv, at the Great Synagogue on Allenby Street.
We want the children to get to know the tradition of making the pilgrimage and going up with the first fruits to the temple that was observed during the time of the Holy Temple. Here in Tel Aviv, especially in Tel Aviv, a place which in any case is not so connected to all this spiritual reality, you can see how the children are excited.
Similar small events took place also in the secular kibbutzim, but in Tel Aviv there was Jewish content added with a celebration of a Torah scroll march. 700 children from grades 1 through 3 from across the city who came with buses were received by the Ta'ir Jewish Studies Institute and the City Department of Torah Culture. The children enjoyed a performance, and after that, they were organized to a parade of Bikurim, bringing the first fruits. Well, not only fruit. After the performance that taught about the significance of Shavuot, the Bikurim parade, and the installation of a new Torah scroll, the children enjoyed a variety of activities, received popsicles, and heard words of Torah from rabbis and educators. But kids are kids, and the distinguished speakers had a hard time speaking to the wild crowd.
We learn from the experience for the coming years. We're planning for next year more people to be here to make things organized. We'll have more appropriate times, programs. Altogether, the children all had a little taste from the experience of the holiday of Bikurim, the first fruits.
Shavuot celebrates the wheat harvest. In the time of the Holy Temple, bread was offered as a sacrifice on Shavuot. This bread represented nourishment for the year, and also represented our cooperation with the divine to create sustenance for the world. Here's a special exhibit that opened in the Israel Museum in honor of Shavuot.
לא על הלחם לבדו, לא על החצי לבדו.
As a sign of the holiday of Shavuot, the holiday of harvesting the wheat, the Israel Museum opened a unique exhibit, the bread exhibit. The exhibit shows the story of the bread from its many aspects, as it's seen in the different communities and ethnic groups that live in the land of Israel.
We chose bread as the topic because we wanted to put together an exhibition that would reflect life in Israel, a variety of different cultures, ethnic groups, and religions. And we found that with bread, it was possible to create a sort of prism, a rainbow of what is happening today in Israel. Bread is the symbol that unites all Jews at all levels, rich and poor, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. It's the common ground between us.
A large selection of bread of many different shapes, styles, grains, and tastes were presented at the exhibit. Unlike most museum presentations, the bread exhibit has actual people who are continuously working on presenting the labor of making dough and bread. Here we are in what is translated as the baker's yard, which was built specifically for the bread exhibit. It's an area where families and children come throughout the summer, July and August, and they can learn bread recipes from various ethnic groups. They can make bread in the Ethiopian manner, the lachuch Yemenite bread, Moroccan frena, and also to weave traditional challah bread for Shabbat. You can't have a bread exhibit without actually eating bread, and so bread was handed out to the visitors. The attraction that stood out most was the 6.5-meter long challah, baked by the Angel Bakery. Among the guests and visitors to the exhibit were Danny Angel and his wife. They are the founders of the famous Angel Bakery that has become a famous institution in Jerusalem in particular and in Israel as a whole. And how can one do anything without politics?
There's an exhibit specifically devoted to the connection between bread and politics. It definitely addresses the issue of the rise in price of bread and the fury or the elimination of the government subsidy.
It took the organizers approximately 4 years to put together the exhibit on bread in Israel. They visited different bakeries and they met families from all kinds of ethnic groups who told them about the role of bread in their lives.
I was born in the Bukhara neighborhood in Jerusalem, and in every home, the mother made the bread herself, alone.
The Jews of Morocco took upon themselves the day after Pesach, Passover, to celebrate their traditional Mimuna celebrations. Kurdistan immigrants took upon themselves to celebrate the Saharana during Pesach. The Bukharian immigrants also wanted a holiday for themselves, and they decided to celebrate their colorful heritage on the day after Shavuot. We joined the preparations for the Congress of Beautiful Bukhara. For 2 years already, the Bukharians have celebrated a day of culture and nostalgia on the day after Shavuot. And with the financial backing of the notable businessman Lev Lebayev, who is himself an immigrant from Bukhara, the sky is the limit.
What we have planned for this evening is a combination between Israeli culture and Bukharan culture. All the well-known Bukharian people and the big Bukharian performing artists will give the best of their repertoires this evening.
From one side of the site, the organizers built a huge model of the beautiful city of Bukhara with colored gates that are similar to the enormous gates in Haragistan in Uzbekistan. The width is 20 meters and the height 7 meters. They are built in the same style and colors as the ancient buildings in Bukhara, with stores and bazaar stalls.
אנשים של פעם, הסבתות שלנו, אמהות שלנו, היו הולכים ברחוב צנוע.
People long ago, our grandmothers and mothers used to walk in the street modestly. Everything closed. Our people today, they should live and be well. Our generation today became very different, modern. They should also become a little more modest, God willing.
In the center of the site, a small museum was built, Moreshet Beit Abba, or Heritage of My Father's House, the first of its kind, in which historic objects are displayed from the Bukharian culture, antique tools, traditional clothing, and in addition, visitors can see in multimedia exhibits the stories and history of the ethnic community. The Mayalev brothers are experts on anything connected to Bukharian music. They are here preparing to excite the thousands.
This is a doeria, a drum that I learned from my father how to play when I was 6. And how did I learn? He didn't teach me how to make the sound. He stood me in front of him and began to play. I opened my eyes and sharpened my ears, and I absorbed and absorbed, and suddenly all that I absorbed began to come out. 6 men and 3 generations on one stage, from the grandfather to the grandson.
So tell me something about the culture.
First of all, it's a lot of speed, a lot of joy. They speak in fast tempo. A lot of cooperation and work at home results in disciplined children, good things, and respect for the elders.
On the other side of the site, organizers are building a great food center where they will prepare more than 50,000 samusot, 3 tons of ushpalov, thousands of chiborak, and other kinds of authentic foods with names that many of you will not recognize from the Bukharian kitchen.
Please send your comments, ideas, and questions to the Israeli Salad email, yoni@israelnn.com, or leave a message on the Israeli Salad voicemail at international dialing code 972-3918-5554. That's 972-3918-5554.
Now we're off to visit one of the many tourist sites in Jerusalem. Within the walls of the central prison in Jerusalem, there are stories about the underground fighters prior to the birth of the state. On the anniversary of their arrest, we went to see what their life was like in the prison, and to tell the story of those who weren't lucky enough to be freed. This is the Museum of the Underground Prisoners in Jerusalem. Tens, perhaps hundreds of prisoners were here within these walls. All were members of the underground organizations, the Haganah, the Etzel, and the Lechi. This old stone structure built during the time of the Ottoman Turks teaches us about the underground organizations in the days before the establishment of the state.
From 1917 to 1948, the building served as a prison. In 1948, during the War of Independence, the British abandoned the place during the war when they left Israel altogether. And as a matter of fact, they evacuated the security area and the prison. At that point, the Haganah, Etzel, and Lechi organizations came in from the west and the Arabs came in from the east. You can still see the holes made by the bullets here in the wall that were the result of the War of Independence. And at the end, the whole area fell into our hands.
What was the day-to-day prison life like? Were there some prisoners who received special treatment?
At the moment, we're actually in a prison cell, and we can see the brown uniforms which the prisoners wore throughout the entire period of their imprisonment, the borshim, the sleeping mats. Right away, you notice the differences between the cells. This bed was used by the head of the cell, the Mukhtar, who was appointed by the British to be responsible for the cell and for the other cellmates. He was responsible for keeping order among the prisoners, and in return, he received privileges. His bed was located near the window. He wore a blue uniform instead of brown. This is an example of the cell which was assigned to those who received special privileges. For example, those with light sentences because they were British citizens or because they were jailed for a first offense. And then you can see the difference. They slept on beds, they were allowed to wear their clothes and not the brown uniforms. In this cell lived a prisoner who was known by the name of Dov Bruner. He was known to everyone and was sentenced to death by hanging.
There were three special figures who had a special connection with this old prison: the rabbi of the prisoners, Rabbi Aryeh Levin, and two of the prisoners who were sitting on death row, Mary Feinstein and Moshe Barazani, who died by blowing themselves up with a grenade that was smuggled into their cell.
He would come in every Shabbat to pray with them, to help them. He was here 25 years, every Shabbat, and it didn't matter what the conditions were. He was here. He never missed even one Shabbat. He always helped them. One day, Rabbi Aryeh Levin came as usual, and the prisoners told him that over there was an inmate who was in a very bad situation. Please, they said, see what you can do for him. The rabbi went over to him and began to talk to him. The inmate wouldn't talk to him, but afterwards he began to open up a little bit, and the rabbi asked him about himself. Who are you, and why are you here? The inmate said, I wasn't arrested because I was a member of the underground. The British caught me, and they thought I was connected to the underground, and so they put me here. My elderly grandparents don't even know that I'm here, and they're terribly worried. The rabbi said, okay, what can you do? How can I help you? And the inmate said, they live in Sha'arayim. The rabbi asked, what street do they live on? The inmate said, there are a lot of shacks. Everything there is huts and shacks on that street. He gave him the name of his family and all the details. When the rabbi left him, he gave him a blessing, that God will help you, and that the help of God will come quickly, and he calmed down a little. His friends came to him later and told him, it's true that the rabbi is very famous, but take into account that there is a limit to what he can accomplish. At the next visit, which was 2 months later because visits were only allowed every 2 months, they called the inmate and said to him, your family is here. He was very surprised, and it turned out that a week after the rabbi had spoken with the inmate, he took a bus to Rehovot and walked to Sha'arayim and then knocked on every door until he found his family and gave them regards from their son. This is a fascinating example of the righteous man who represents the period.
The execution chamber. This is the gallows, and in one of these rooms, Moshe Barazani and Meir Feinstein blew themselves up.
When the British would execute the Jews, they would take them to Akko, which was a very mountainous area. They wanted to execute Moshe Barazani and Meir Feinstein here because they were afraid that the Etzel organization was going to ambush the car that was to take them to Akko. Therefore, against their usual routine, they decided instead not to take them to Akko, but rather hang them here.
Now there is an exhibition on site of photos from today of the underground prisoners.
You can see here a photograph of Yael Ben-Dor, a fighter in the Lehi organization who comes here and speaks with visitors.
Behind the bars of the central prison are buried the stories of the men and women who, with their deaths, gave us life. Okay, that's all for this week. Join us again next week for another edition. Until then, from all of us here at INN TV Arutz Sheva, Shalom.